ready?
We're ready.
It'll work.
Yes.
Good. Are you ready?
We're live.
Good. This is the Public Safety Committee meeting for Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the Pledge of Allegiance. Charlie, can you do the Pledge of Allegiance? We've got a real flag this
Oh
time.
my goodness, I don't have a miniature flag. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Tanian, will you do the roll call for me, please?
Yes, sir. Committee member Janice. Committee member Leffler.
Aye.
Vice Chair Hightower.
Aye.
Chair Bercuda.
Here.
Captain Malott.
Here.
Chief Capobianco.
Here.
And I did not see Captain Benfield.
Okay. Wonderful. Before we get into the regular orders of business, I'd like to entertain a move on the agenda. One of our presenters has a time commitment problem, and I'd like to move 9A up to just below 4A.
Second.
Thank you. We don't need a roll call. We're happy with that. We're happy with it.
As long as everybody's in agreement.
Got it.
You gonna put him up right first in new business, is that?
No, I'll put it in right after the Greene
Oh, right.
presentation.
Okay.
Okay.
It'll be up.
Oh, up here, okay. Okay.
We have an informational presentation on the city's emergency planning services by Jacob Greene and Associates. Gentlemen,
Thank you.
help us out.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you for having us, Mr. Chairman. Members of committee and staff for having us. A very short presentation. We're from Jacob Greene Associates. We've been retained to help you with the emergency management program. We're going to kind of provide a quick overview of who we are and what we can do for you, and the contract and the scope of work that we're been contracted to work on. So with that, if we just go to the next slide. Thank you again for having us. My name is Anthony Clemente, or Tony. William Simmons. We're here again, part of our team. We'll talk about this in a moment. We're housed here locally. We're a local firm out of Tustin, California, made up of a little over 300 years of local government experience. One of the things that really makes us unique is that we're operators. We came from local government. The things that we help you with is we've been in the trenches, either building, planning, training to exercising, or managing that response. So we really bring the local experience, which is I think what we were looking for, is to bring a firm in to help you, and those that have kind of boots on the ground experience, as we call that. We hope that we become long-term partners. That's really our modus operandi, if you will, is develop that relationship so that we can help you after this initial stint and continue on bettering the city, preparing yourself, getting ready for those things that may happen. Next slide, thank you. This is our Jacob Greene and Associates part of our team, but this is the team specifically behind your city and your city contract and programs that we're working on. Jacob Greene, our president and CEO, Nikki Raymond Chung, who could not be here today, our director of emergency management, myself, Tony Clemente, local guy, born and bred, 32 years of local government here in Southern California in public safety. William Simmons, transitioning veteran from the Air Force, emergency manager from the Air Force. And then Lynn Mata, new to our team, but she's been kind of in the Southern California circle, if you will. She's been a neighbor of yours, not too far away, up until recently, Lynn Mata. So this is our team. We have other folks on the public safety team that are not part of the project, but we have a big call when needed bench, if you will, public safety professionals. Adam, next slide, thank you. So our process moving forward, one of the things that we bring to the table is before we kind of jump in to start helping you train and exercise and update plans, is we do an assessment. We come and we do what we call a gap analysis. And that gap analysis is looking at from a holistic perspective, looking at the emergency management program, using what we call the POETI model, and we do a gap analysis. So we make sure that before we or your staff really jump into doing any work, we make sure we have a very good assessment in terms of the emergency management program, looking at planning, organizing the office, the staff, emergency management program, training, exercising, and equipping, and we put that into a work plan. We build a work plan that's generally a 18 to 24 month work plan, things that we can do for you, things that you can do in-house. And we often do this when cities are bringing on a new emergency management program, building a new office or program. We'll come in, do the gap analysis. In this case, we're going to partner with you on this. And then we build the work plan. What critical tasks need to happen to make sure that the city is meeting national, local, and state standards and requirements, but also making sure that we're maintaining best practices and industry-specific standards. And then we implement. So we start with the assess, we put together the plan, and then we execute planning deliverables, training deliverables, exercise deliverables, and we help you with the staffing as well. Next slide, please. So these are kind of the critical tasks that are going to occur. We're already, Kyle, we're probably almost 3 weeks, a month into the gap analysis. Kyle and his staff, outstanding job of getting us records and documentation that we need to perform the gap analysis. Followed down with staff interviews. We develop that gap analysis, and then from there is we put together the work plan. And the work plan is not necessarily this pretty pictured strategy, if you will. Is a Gantt chart with the critical tasks that need to happen to get the city's emergency management program meeting national, state requirements and also industry standards. And then on the implement stage, is we're helping you manage emergency management grants. We're helping you with training and exercising, and we're also helping you manage your volunteer programs, CERT and the RACES program. Next slide. Now I'll have you advance this one more, maybe. Perfect. So when we talk about that continuous improvement that we build into our work plan, typically what happens is in a local jurisdiction, we recognize that we may be somewhat deficient in a certain area of emergency management. And a lot of times internally is we'll fix that with more training, more exercising. We get grant funds, we buy things, we implement things, we develop policies. But that process has to be continuous. And so this is where we live in this continuous improvement process that we will build into the strategies and the work plan, the gap analysis that we're building for you is continually planning, equipping, training, exercising, and evaluating. What happens many times is we think that the training is all we need, or the one-time training, or the one exercise, or just buying the equipment, but we have to make sure that we're synchronizing these things, making sure we're linking things and syncing things together, and continually improving. And that's what we bring to the table. That's what we're going to do for you. Training and exercise program, we're going to come in and do some initial training. We'll help you with maintaining that training, and we'll validate that training through the application of both tabletop exercising and functional exercising, as we refer to that as. Next bullet point. I'll have you kind of just maybe give me a couple more bullet points. Apologize for that. So the training that we're bringing to you is disaster response for senior officials. As elected officials and the senior management staff, what do we need to make sure that we're being attentive to in emergency management, how we're supporting the program, orientating to the emergency operations plan, making sure that we understand the strategy with which we respond to those events that are particular in the city, EOC section and specific position training. That's making sure that the team that comes to the proverbial kind of conference room table, if you will, managing the disasters, managing the next fire, the next COVID, I shouldn't say that, right? The next major event that happens, that we can come together as a team. And the important part of that is we have public safety professionals that crisis manage every single day, but the rest of our staff, the non-uniformed personnel, if you will, they're not accustomed to coming to the Emergency Operations Center and managing crisis from start to finish. And then our tabletop exercise, and lastly would be our function exercise. The tabletop exercise is just bringing that scenario to the city, getting folks in the Emergency Operations Center, working through a series of injects of problems, and working to solve the problem of the day. And then the function exercise is actually moving parts and pieces of the Emergency Operations Center. Again, making sure that we can stand up to that kind of that bad day that we're having in the city when that does happen. And the last piece of that is Lynn Mott is going to help us with managing the Community Emergency Response Team program, and then also our amateur radio program called RACES. And I didn't mean to say problem, I meant to say program. Our RACES program.
Oh, you talked to Bill.
Apologize for that, Bill.
No worries.
Next slide, sir. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, can you give me a couple more bullet points? Perfect. So this is kind of the major critical tasks that we're going to achieve on the CERT program, coordinating your CERT training academies, continuing education program, making sure that we're keeping our volunteers engaged and polished to a certain degree, making sure that we liaison with our neighboring cities around us, and also the operational area or the county that we call it, and then also with our RACES program and our supporting the amateur radio program. Adam, thank you. Again, these are the critical tasks, is just making sure that we have that call out so that when we need them, we can get a hold of them. Registration management and instructor facilitation. Our team brings the experience with both the CERT and the RACES program, managing the programs, being operators, and for the CERT program is the folks on our team, we've been CERT instructors, CERT program managers, we've been engaged at the state level in Sacramento, and we've helped develop federal curriculum. So you certainly got the right team to help you out with that, for sure. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you. That was rapid. That's that proverbial drinking out of a fire hydrant, but wanted to provide us a quick overview of who we are, what we do, and we're going to bring to the city of San Clemente. Our team, again, we're operators, we're practitioners. We're not necessarily the private sector that have never been government employees, have never been boots on the ground, so to speak. We get it. We understand the trials and tribulations that we have in managing an emergency management program, keeping people perishable skills, keeping the interest level there for the public, and making sure that we can stand up. We're having that bad day in the city when that does happen again. With that, I'm going to open up to any questions or comments that you may have as we kind of bring this to a close.
How many cities do you have that operate the emergency preparedness end of it, not with law enforcement, linked with law enforcement directly? Like our city here is with Public Works.
Sure.
Is that unusual?
That's very common. It's not uncommon.
Okay.
Simply what we see at the county levels, they'll be embedded in either fire department or police department or sheriff's department, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see at the local level is Public Works is a place that we find them all the time. We find them in the city manager's office. We have seen them in community services.
Okay.
Yeah.
What other cities are contract you?
I'm sorry?
What other cities contract you here locally?
We're working with Dana Point, San Juan Capistrano, Lake Forest.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the Tri-Cities. And I saw it's a great list of people, but who's the actual initial point of contact for the city of San Clemente? One person.
From our team?
Yeah.
Reagan Chung is our primary
Okay.
point of contact. He's the program manager.
And Adam, I guess this is a continuing program and contract. I assume it's been budgeted, obviously, for this first fiscal year.
We actually are just doing a 6-month trial period with them,
Okay.
but I'm sure we'll extend it. It's about $90,000 a year.
Okay.
We get about 143,000 from the songs. This fiscal year, it's now the declining, if you're aware of that contract.
Right.
But anyway, so it'll cover that and some supplies.
Okay.
We have to impress you fast.
Yeah.
And with Dana Point, San Juan Capistrano, so you've already integrated with OCFA
Yes.
and OCSD.
Yeah.
And now you're going to be integrating with our Marine.
That's correct.
Okay.
And Raymond Chung, your program manager for the city, he was the assistant emergency manager for the county of Warren, so he's very much a local guy. I had shared the same position in Riverside County.
Yeah, so you say you're gonna do an audit of the system and plan, organize, all the way down to training?
Yes.
What's the time frame and all that?
So the gap analysis is about a 6-week process. The work plan is about another 3-week process. And then we're going to go right into training and the exercising. We're going to go right into that.
Do you think within 6 months you're gonna have a tabletop release?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
It's aggressive.
Yeah. Typically what we do is we base the training exercising based upon the gap analysis, but we already know, which is very typical, that we need to refresh staff on EOC management as section training. And generally we tie a tabletop exercise at the tail end of that training to validate what we just did. And then we'll come back either 4 weeks or 6 weeks later and do the functional, which is just a little bit more complex, if you will.
And then also you talked about grants. You take care of the grant end of it?
We are. We're providing some technical expertise and some administrative support behind your grants.
And there's also a billing component of whatever we spend. We have to go back to songs and show them what we've spent so we can get credit for that funding and all.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
William, what's your role in this program now going to be?
That's a great question. So I'm very much assistant to Tony. So as Tony kind of alluded to, I did 10 years in the Air Force, right? I'm transitioning out. I have my bachelor's degree in emergency management, but what I'm lacking is that public service experience. So I'm working directly under Tony as well as Ray to both hone those skills, and then on a more applicable level, I'm also right there. I'm doing the training tomorrow with Dana Point, so I'm very hands-on in that regards as well. And in the event that an EOC is activated, I can be recalled to help aid that as well.
I'm trying to shake all the Fed experience out of them, and now we're at the local level.
Back
Yeah.
to the real world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, well, just one hope is I know Nick, Joe, and I started in law enforcement and fire services almost 50 years ago. So it would really be neat in this tabletop if you could have some plastic police cars and fire trucks that you can push around, just for the visual.
So noted.
Absolutely.
So noted. And just to be clear, the red fire trucks in Orange County, right? Most of them.
Yeah, you go.
Many ones.
So I worked out in the desert for a long time. We had white back in the day. Any other questions for us?
Thank you very much.
You know,
Of course.
If nobody else has a question, I do have one question. We have another item on the RACES program,
Yes.
on today's agenda. Can you talk about what the RACES support is that your group will be taking on?
Sorry, I think our primary support is making sure that we have that ready call list, making sure that we have the folks on call well rostered, trained up, and then be able to plug them into your more routine events, but making sure we're plugging them into the overall disaster emergency management plan. So kind of look at those kind of 3 things, and then we're certainly going to work with your RACES program. Any other support that we can provide individually to them, we can bring that as well.
So would that be the Tri-Cities RACES program?
Yes,
That would be the primary
absolutely.
group?
That'll be the umbrella for the city, right?
And I think he's spent a lot of time with Ray Chung, kind of walking through that a little bit.
Yes, and Ben was on that call also. We had a very productive discussion.
Perfect.
Great. Keel, thank you very much for coordinating this, because I've been chomping at the bit to get this planning going, because it's just been,
Yeah.
and we're lucky we haven't had a problem since.
That's another quick question that you just reminded me of. What is the correct pronunciation of your first name?
Adam likes to tease me by the keel. I go by Kyle. It doesn't matter.
You go by, okay.
I go by Kyle. Yeah.
Somebody, I have a last name that has been butchered for almost 70 years. So I just wanted to find what you like to be called.
Do you have an umlaut over the O?
I should have,
Yeah,
but we
sorry.
dropped it. Very perceptive. Yeah, you're right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Let's move on.
I hope we can work real close with you, because there is a great need in the city
Certainly.
for your services.
Honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
So, Chair,
Yes.
Computer, since we're on that topic, and we have Keel with us.
Now I'm totally confused.
Would an update sometime in the future for the Public Safety Committee be something you'd like to see?
I think it would be very desirable.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
60
is
days,
there?
maybe the meeting after next, so they have time
Yeah,
to.
how about 90?
Is that enough time for you guys to
Of course.
get a little bit further down the
Oh,
road?
yes, oh, yes,
Okay.
yes.
This
So
is,
2 months on the April meeting.
Yes, that's right.
this program is essential to keep this city running because it could fall apart at any, we don't want anything falling apart in the city. And if we don't plan for it, we're going to be surprised.
I think one thing you probably haven't worked so much with is marine safety. Probably most cities don't have that, so that's gonna be a component you really need to.
Certainly.
To create and factor in.
Understood. And to your point, we don't have marine safety where I came from.
No. Surf is not up.
No, certainly not up. Thank you. We're going to make room for our next presenter, so we're going to step out. But we're going to follow up with you. And any other questions and follow up, please.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Now,
Thank you.
you can stick around if you want, if he's not paying for you, you know.
They're gonna be running out here.
Because Bill is the
You
next
paid for a quarter of an
presentation.
hour, so they're gone.
No, we should stay for Bill.
If you don't, yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
good.
Perfect.
Please, sit down.
I actually just sent presentation I gave earlier to you, Adam. I don't know if you can pull it up.
I may not. You know what? Let me preface. Let me start the report on this item, and then I'll figure out a way to get your presentation up so you can go
I can
over.
also give it with the stuff I have here. If that's
This guy is fully.
You know what? Our IT manager's coming in. I'll have him look at your box of wires, and
you should.
I'll take his word for what he wants to plug in the cities.
You gotta go over there.
I think
You're
you
gonna
just
need to
meant
be
you were-
over there.
Yeah,
These
that
are
was instantaneous.
Brian,
these are
you can sit here.
some visual.
Join us at the table.
Some of you saw it earlier.
Adam, we can make
Wait a
room if we
minute,
need.
wait a minute.
It's safer over here.
Holy mackerel.
They like it over there.
A box full of wires.
Not the football.
City where you out there?
This
I worked.
This-
You know what? Yeah, if you want to broadcast on that screen,
retired from Ontario.
or do you want to like?
I can
actually-
connect it up to that by HDMI if that is how it's connected.
We'd have to pull some cables and stuff. You could probably just cast to that TV.
I don't know if I can actually, but we can try.
Is that your goal to show
I'm gonna
that?
get guy that
I can.
I have to work with this guy because he's so technical. My eyes glaze over. Say, slow it down, dude.
Kind of recall them to it, and basically, gentlemen, I spoke with this committee.
Let me give a report to begin the item, and then we'll transition. I guess I want to give everybody some background. So, the next item we're talking about is 9A. It's the Tri-Cities Races Emergency Data Network Facility Plan. This was originally talked about in the Public Safety Committee in starting at the end of 2020 through to some of 2021. The reason it's back on today's agenda is because the process that was laid out by some previous staff as far as who's buying the equipment, who's installing the equipment, and the process for how that equipment gets installed on city property has changed. At this point, the city, we are aware that there's a general plan policy that says that the city shall encourage these amateur radio, specifically the RACES program, in the city. But the decision has been to allow the operators to install that, give us that equipment to install. Because it is not the city's equipment on a city facility, a city lease is what is required at this point, and that lease needs to be approved by the city council. This is a few reasons for this. One is city staff is not in control of all of the information that is being transmitted through this, through these devices, and as it would relate to any private cell phone carrier or other types of equipment that are not controlled by staff, a lease is required. The second reason is it's consistent with how this has been done in the past. Chief Capobianco, I believe it was you, it might have been somebody from the Orange County Emergency Services, talked about the array of cameras that we have that are kind of pointing in like the Camp Pendleton direction. That was something that was provided by a group that was associated with the University of California. We made the University of California sign a lease to put those cameras up. And so this process is very consistent with how the city's done it in the past. And so we want to come back to the committee and ask for a recommendation to go to council when a land lease is presented to them for the RACES equipment.
Okay.
So with that, I'm more than happy to have Bill give his presentation as he gave it previously. If it's not necessary, and the committee is, okay moving forward with the recommendation, or they would like more information from staff, I have our Public Works Director and our IT Manager here to answer any technical questions.
Okay. I'd like to have a refresher on that. What is the need, and what is the solution to that need? Right?
Yes.
Bill, can you help me out with that?
Certainly. The need is basically for communication during an incident, during an emergency. RACES is recognized nationwide, and specifically in San Clemente, as a redundancy to existing communications infrastructure. And what a lot of people may think of when they think of RACES and amateur radio support during incidents is we old guys in a chair with a handheld radio. We've evolved, right? The amateur radio emergency data network covers much of Southern California. San Clemente is actually kind of like a black hole that is not covered. And because of the geography here, we need the city's support to be effective. So in order to be an effective redundancy to emergency communications, that support is needed. And I greatly appreciate the support this committee has expressed in the past. So, does that answer your question, Nick?
What kind of support does the city need to give to you? I mean, what exactly is the need?
In the proposal that I've shared with staff, I mentioned 3 sites. One is I call it the Saltwater Tower. There's a water tower and multiple antenna towers and masts available there. That, I believe, is the highest point in the city, and that is where you need to have equipment to get a microwave signal out of the city. And I've tested that holding a dish antenna in my hand on that hilltop, and I was able to connect to Saddleback Mountain. So I know that that'll work, and that's probably the most needed facility. The second one is a water tower on the north side of town. I think it's off Via Floritas, if I'm not mistaken. And that basically provides gap coverage for some important facilities that aren't covered by the Saltwater Tower node. And the third facility would not need any substantial equipment. It would be very small. I wanted to set something up at the lifeguard tower on the pier, because the pier has been a kind of a focal point for, I'll say, civic participation in recent years, and having a redundancy to the potentially having cameras there would be very valuable. So those are the 3 sites, probably in order of priority, that I would hope that we could get support to install over the next.
In the past, the last one, the pier guard tower was a desirable site, as I remember, because of the pier bowl. You got the coverage that way,
Exactly.
where you
The
don't have it
geography
from anybody
is-
else.
Right, we call it pier bowl because it's shaped like a bowl, right? If you don't have something there, you're kind of in an RF shadow in a lot of the pier bowl with the other 2 facilities. So that does provide coverage for that area. which is, I think, strategically important for the city.
Okay.
It says here, Bill, that this will provide a backbone for the emergency network in San Clemente. Races performs the backbone for a lot of emergency communication systems for various cities around here in Orange County, Mission Viejo specifically. And if I recall, they had some experiments or demonstrations where they actually brought down the city communications, the fire, the police, and Races was the only one that was left. And what happened?
No, I'm not familiar with those tests.
Well, what happened basically was that without that, nothing would have happened. It was a tremendous backup to the systems that we really count on that may fail for who knows whatever reason. So it's a very important. It's basically backs up what we already have and kind of take for granted. To me, that's the most important aspect of it. And they usually have a role in the emergency operating centers for all these cities too. There's always a desk for the Races people there.
That's a big statement, no doubt. Do you find that also?
Oh, 100%. We rely upon, it's typical 700, 800 UHF, VHF communications, and when those things are degraded or burdened, then our backup has always been amateur radio and the Races program.
In my presentation that I gave earlier, I did a little bit of math, and I've been discouraged not to do math on these presentations. But the bit I did was that human communication is about 50 bits per second, and a high-quality photo is 6 megabytes. So the data links we can create are 20 million times faster than voice communications. So, and voice communication is very important, right? It's that is basically the backbone of emergency communications. The capability that this equipment would provide has the potential to be incredibly important and save lives and preserve property.
Great. Mr. Kroger, do you have any questions of Bill on the program?
No, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff is way over my head, but no, I can see the importance of it.
Yeah.
He and I've talked a good bit about it. He's understand about 10% of what he's saying. Anyway. He didn't get too technical today, but he can get really technical.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We're working on that.
Here, if you guys want to take a look at it, this kit, it's got a battery that'll power the whole kit for about 20 hours. It can be charged by solar or USB-C power delivery or really any DC source. It powers a mesh node, network switch, and 4 mini PCs that provide voice, video, text chat, screen sharing meeting capabilities, kind of fault-tolerant, highly redundant text chat that spans the region. It's got a 6.3 million articles on Wikipedia, just in case you happen to need that. And a PBX server. And we're in the process, and this is going to be standardized county-wide, but we're going to have basically mesh phone extensions so that you can reach people on a normal phone. You can have non-FCC licensed people pick up that phone, dial an extension, and they don't have to worry about a push-to-talk button. They don't have to worry about squelch or frequencies of channels. They just pick up the phone and dial the extension, and they'll be able to reach the facility they need. So that's what
So are you talking about an EOC? You're talking about they? You're talking about people that are sitting at a tabletop?
the EOC is provisioned extensions in the plan, yes. So are all Races members, city facilities.
One other comment, Bill, in reading the material you have here, radiation from TV towers, radio towers, the FCC has regulations for how much energy can be broadcast and the effects on human tissue. They recently added that requirement to amateur radio operators. Now, I didn't see anything in there, but I think you need to add that you're going to do a prediction of the impact of the radiation on human body and be sure they're not, because I'm an amateur radio operator and I had to run that analysis myself.
I understand that's required, and you're more experienced than I am, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I understand that's required if it's a antenna you've made yourself, but otherwise you can rely on manufacturer-provided specifications. And all the equipment that we use on the mesh is commercial equipment. We just modify the firmware, and we kind of go to work with it. So I don't know that any unique testing is required, but the calculations would be even fun to do. If we need to prepare those, that wouldn't be a problem. I ran the numbers myself, and as long as you don't put the feed horn for the dish in your mouth, you're probably going to be fine from this equipment. It's not very powerful.
Yeah, the ARL has a program that you can run through that. It's pretty straightforward. I think you should do that, just to make people feel a little more comfortable about the whole thing.
Certainly, right. And as hams, we're allowed to use up to 1,500 watts, but the equipment used on the mesh, it's generally 1 watt. It's about 4 times stronger, the good equipment, than your household Wi-Fi router. So it's stronger, but it's not anything that comes anywhere close to any limit that exists or is proposed. But we can run whatever calculations are required.
Part of the sensitivity. Now, as far as the lease thing, that's the next thing on part of this thing is recommending to the city council engaging in a lease to utilize the properties and the resources of the city.
So that's a question. When Mr. Krudinger originally came in, he was talking about what I believe you're referring to as the South Tower. It's the one off of Salvador. And there was no discussion at that time about other locations.
Okay.
However, it makes sense that there are other locations.
Sure.
Those locations, specifically the lifeguard tower on the pier, could be very problematic to adding new equipment. So I think there's a few ways to go here. One is the Public Safety Committee could just simply recommend to the council that the council facilitate and encourage the use of this technology in whatever way that the group, clearly our emergency management services provider, and say Public Works and IT deem appropriate for the city, or it could be something a bit more focused, like an actual plan for the group. And I think that's a little too difficult to start getting into the technicalities of each location. As staff, I think we would just recommend that whatever plan is moving forward, if it's the committee's desire to make a recommendation to the council, whatever that plan may be, that it be coordinated, with every other group that, it needs to be. But generally a blanket approval that the city should, help foster and facilitate this would be fine from the city staff's perspective.
Wonderful.
Well, would Jacob Greene Associates be able to come up with that kind of a plan? Or you're going to be part of this, I'm sure, right?
Certainly, I think we would take on the technical side of recommendation from folks like Bill, of course, and just make sure we're implementing those or dovetailing those into the city's emergency planning.
I'm like Kyle, I'm not very knowledgeable on this at all, so I would rather defer my decisions to what, as you mentioned, with planning and you guys think too. So,
Well, I think that our thing is the focus is to inform the city council that we think this is an important program and that staff should help facilitate getting this program implemented.
Mr. Chairman, could I entertain maybe the wording of a motion that we might look at it? I think I would move that we forward the following recommendation to the city council. The recommendation being that the city council, and here's where I've changed the wording, and initiate initiate the required process to provide races the ability to utilize their radio network.
How about that on city sites?
The radio network at city sites.
Utilizing city sites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something, would that be something everybody could buy? It's all we're doing is recommending that this move forward. The city council would then direct staff to figure out the way to make that happen, which is what their job is.
Well, there's certainly a benefit
You know-
in doing that, yeah, and it's been done by other cities, so I think that's a good motion. Yeah.
The only thing I would say is that recommendation creates a multi-step process with the council. The first is going to the council to get their approval to move forward on these types of projects, whereas a recommendation that the council approve the installation of RACES equipment at specific city locations means that we can just do the work with Bill and his group and Jacob Greene and Associates, and then just go to council and say, this is the proposal in front of you. Public Safety Committee has recommended approval of the use of this technology on city property.
So you want to add the word?
I want to get rid of the word initiate.
Okay, good word, okay.
We recommend.
Okay, that we recommend that the.
Recommend that the city council approve the use of RACES technology on the city-owned or managed parcels for the purposes of emergency management.
Okay, wait a minute.
Parcels.
Technology.
There's a lot of stuff we don't own. If you say city-owned, there's things that we don't own but we manage. So it's nice to differentiate between.
So how would you describe that property?
City controlled.
I would say city-owned or managed. That covers everything.
Owned or managed. Okay, so this technology is- okay, so now let's see. The recommendation being that the city council approve use of RACES technology on city-owned or managed property? Could it be something that simple?
Yeah. If you want to be specific about what it's used for, which I don't.
I don't think I want to.
That's fine.
So,
Glaze over.
okay. So I move that we forward the following recommendation to the city council. The recommendation being that the city council approve use of RACES technology on city-owned or managed property.
Anybody for a second?
You want to write in accordance with,
No, I think leaving it like that is good because that gives the city council a chance to interact with these guys, with anybody they want to interact with Kyle Keel over there, whatever. Because it's not that specific. It's just that they should move forward to utilize. I think the motion's pretty good.
Okay. Jenna seconds.
I'll second.
Roll. And all in favor? Raise a hand.
I like that.
Aye.
Works?
That one?
Unanimous, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Any
you very
more,
much.
Bill?
No, I appreciate the support of the committee again, and it's good to have a vote on this. I do have that appointment that I need to get my son to, but I have a little bit of time, so I'll hang out and
Super.
observe your good work.
Good.
Excellent.
You guys understand what's going on?
Absolutely.
How this stuff works?
That's why I think Bill explained it to us.
Myself, in the context of the organization, I am the technical director of Tri-Cities Racing, so I'm the point of contact for your mesh topics.
I'm in Colorado. Work closely.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks, Tony. Well,
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Charles.
Next on the agenda is the minutes from the last meeting of January 25th.
I move that we approve the minutes from the meeting of January 25th.
I'll second that.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Raise hand. Up.
4-0.
4-0. Thank you. All right. Any oral or written communications to speak of?
The city has not received any written communications.
Got it. Let's see, reviews and recommendations. Sheriff's Department fiscal year 2022 first quarter
So-
performance measures.
Chair Percuda, on this one, OCSD, due to a change in some technology, is still working on their performance measures, I believe, unless.
I have most of it here.
No, that's not acceptable.
So we can.
Yeah.
So what I typically try to do is provide the performance measures, especially for some of the more complex public safety personnel, provide it as far ahead in advance as possible.
Right.
If the committee would like, we can distribute that today and then put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah, because we need to review it.
Yeah, if Captain Benfield would like to talk about the numbers at all, just to give some context.
Yeah, I'm sure much of this won't be news to most of you people, the kind of things that we track. But most of it is very self-explanatory. If you're looking at the page, it starts with total calls for service. This is for quarter one and quarter two of last year. So, I see the calls are fairly consistent. In St. Clemente, we average anywhere from a low of 20,000 to a high of 30,000 calls for service a year. And then those are our numbers so far. I think last year, once our numbers are finalized, I think we're going to be right around 23,000 calls for service. The category below that, number one, the priority one calls for service. That's when you see a police car drive one with its lights and sirens on. Beneath that, number of traffic collision reports. Part 1 crimes, if you're familiar with those, they're significant crimes that are most likely to be reported. Population, that one doesn't change much. Number of Part 1 crimes measured per 1,000 of your population. That's a number that people like to compare against other cities. I would advise don't do that. It's super misleading. Because there are a multitude of varying Part 1 crimes, right? Murder could be a Part 1 crime, and something far less significant like auto theft could be a Part 1 crime, and we could have a number of 5 and they're all murders, and the next city could have a number of 5 and they're all vehicle thefts. We'd have the same number, right? So we don't like using that as a comparison. Use of force, I don't have that information yet, the exact numbers, but I can tell you in St. Clemente, based on my experience, we run right around 50 to 60 a year. Right now, I think we have 5 in the hopper, and we're 7 weeks into the year. Last year, I was here for exactly half of last year, and I think I had 30 while I was here. So,
now, what's the degree of force that
any use of force? So with us, anything outside of routine handcuffing, right? So if I have to use some sort of pain compliance technique or a takedown, all the way up to deadly force, and everything in between is considered a use of force.
Including taser.
Yep, everything.
Yeah, definitely. What about just like you talk about cuffing? What about resistance? So we have to use any kind of control.
If there's resistance that we have to overcome, that's a use of force. There's another caveat to our policy that covers complaint of pain. Even if we don't believe we use force, like I handcuff you and there's no resistance, but then you later complain of pain, that automatically becomes a use of force and goes through the whole use of force analysis. Our uses of force as a department are very, very low. As many of you realize, there's thousands upon thousands of contacts with law enforcement every year, and the number of force used is really, really low. So I can get you those numbers once they actually come in. We were literally working on this today because today's my first day back after about a week of being off. But number of arrests, self-explanatory, right? Parking citations through both OCSD and the elite system that St. Clemente uses, followed by moving violations, number of Part 1 crimes, which is just a repeat from the above section. The number of Part 2 crimes are everything else that's not a Part 1 crime, so your less significant offenses, and ones that are less likely to be reported. Part 1 crimes for the previous year they have on there as kind of a comparison.
Is there a way to get the breakdown of the Part 1 crime?
Yeah, they're on the DOJ or the FBI website, or I can give them to you guys, whatever you'd like. In fact, they're switching. The DOJ is switching its reporting system from what used to be UCR, the Uniform Crime Reporting, system, and it's becoming NIBRS, which is a National Incident-Based Reporting System. So one of the fun things that we get to deal with this year is a transition year. They switched mid-year, so at the end of June, they switched. We haven't been DOJ certified yet. You have to supply all your numbers, they look at them, and then they certify them. So we can't even officially release the new numbers yet. And on top of that, NIBRS tracks different categories and different levels of categories, which are going to completely throw our numbers off. So you will see, like when we try to compare last year's numbers to this next year's numbers, people are going to lose their minds. They're going to think that something went terribly wrong. One of the things that NIBRS does that UCR didn't was UCR would take like your most significant offense, and that's what they would stat it as. NIBRS includes offenses within offenses. So if it's a robbery that then turns into a carjacking and then turns into an assault on somebody and then is a theft of a purse, it counts all of those. UCR didn't do that.
Individually?
Yes.
Oh,
so you'll have much more, you'll look like you have much higher numbers. The reality is you'll get much more accurate statistical tracking as far as what crimes actually occurred. So this next year is going to be a mess, and that's something we're trying to work out for the annual report and the statistics that we provide to the city. Is the numbers are going to look like they don't jive. They're going to look like something happened. That's something we're going to have to work our way through. Moving forward in the years to come, they will all be NIBRS numbers, so it will make more sense following this first year.
Okay, so the city council, I can see the city council saying, Public Safety Committee, what's up with these big numbers? So you're going to be reporting to us and explaining this stuff so that when the city council members say, hey, what's up, we can say, hey, we're right on top of it too.
Yeah, and they have the annual report that we're putting together is going to have that kind of disclaimer in there, and we're going to refer people to please look at the DOJ website, look into NIBRS, so that it's NIBRS, just so that they can kind of wrap their own heads around the different tracking system and why the numbers are going to look that way. Ultimately, it'll be a good thing. It'll be a lot more accurate and much more real time than UCR was.
Well, are you running them side by side, or did you cut it off?
They're discontinuing UCR, so the DOJ is no longer going to be using UCR. They're switching to NIBRS, which creates a problem for us because mid-year we go from DOJ number or UCR numbers to this different stat system.
A period of time of both would help a lot, probably.
Yeah, you compare it and say, hey,
right.
But you can't do that, right?
They stopped doing it. So.
The last quarter of 21 on the Part 1 crimes per 1,000, it says false. Did the map didn't work or what?
Yeah, exactly. It didn't calculate that. But
Spreadsheet error, yeah. Didn't like the
scroll over to September of 21. You'll see the population doesn't change, and the Part 1 crimes went up by 1. So it's essentially 1.499. It's the same number basically. Yeah, I actually hit the lady up about this as soon as I got it. I'm like, why does it say false?
Is there going to be a financial impact to you on the switch over to NIBRS from the UCR
We
system?
don't believe so. There may be in the amount of data that we have to track, but I don't think that will translate to the city.
Okay.
Same on the workload?
I think so, yeah. We're learning as we go through. We have to train people in the changeover process. But once they're trained, they're trained. It's not like something they have to do every year. So you should just be switching from one brand to another.
Now, are your reports electronically filed, or they're all handwritten?
Ours are electronic, yeah.
So it's picking out pieces of the thing, and the computer will do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, right.
How about a quick report on the automated license plate reader technology that just got implemented? You sent us something on that. Another city went.
Los Alamitos went with it. Block thing.
Yeah, it's very popular. It's
Flock,
yeah, a lot of people are looking at it. The city, I believe, if I have the information correct, the city's looking at putting out a request for proposals again.
Well, again? I thought it was all done.
It was, yeah, but there was an article written about a specific company that some people felt may have been misleading as far as its capabilities, and because of that, I think the city wants to make sure that they, you have to have someone from the city for the exact reasoning here, but my guess is that to ensure that we didn't go with a sole source contract with something because of the allegation, we're putting it out to everyone to ensure that it's a fair process, a fair bidding process.
Gotta do it.
Yeah.
Gotta do it.
I think it's a smart move, and as far as this camera system going in, if they do end up winning the contract, this might push it back by a couple months.
So, do you know when the contract, the bids are due in?
I don't think they've announced the RFP yet.
Okay.
I think that's coming at the end of the month. I don't know if you know anything about that or not.
I'm not part of that
Yeah.
process.
I think it's going to be the end of this month that it goes out,
All right.
and I would assume that that's going to be due back maybe a month later.
Oh,
So,
next fiscal year.
yeah. In July, maybe? Maybe?
Let's hope for
It's just-
June, so it doesn't go over, because then they've got to go through the budget process
Oh,
again.
thank you very much.
I believe that the budget, the program was planned to be budgeted for multiple years with the installation, so I don't think there's any additional cost, even if it gets pushed over. Plus, staff would probably just roll over those funds into the next budget anyways.
I think we're worried about the bids coming in here, and we're about ready to, and then they got a new fiscal year, switching to a new one, and have to redo it all over again.
That is, if that was the case, then the city would do absolutely no RFPs after March
Yeah.
of every year, and that's, we have a process in place where we can
Okay.
deal with that.
Got it. Thank you, Chief Benfield.
Yeah.
Good job. All right, now, so next month, we'll get some more detail from these things.
Yeah,
So the only thing that you don't have is use of force?
Yeah, basically that we provide. Those are the only numbers that are not on here, and I can get you exact numbers because obviously we tracked it, we just couldn't get them today.
Well, I would put it to the next meeting, then maybe we could also get something like this on the part one, the breakdown of the part one crimes, because it's on, because if that's specifically on the agenda, maybe the public would be interested in that also. Yep.
Can we do that on the agenda?
Yes.
Super. Okay. Next order of business, Marine Safety Fiscal Year 2022 first quarter performance measures. Gee,
Better be better prepared.
we gotta get you some, another bar in. Come on.
Maybe like an oak cluster.
Maybe, yeah.
Some
Eagles.
epaulets.
How about
Epaulets.
eagles?
Epaulets would look good. Thanks, Bill.
So do you guys have any questions? I think you had a chance to take a look at the performance measures. I can answer any of your questions. If you want me to go over them, I can go over them, but
Lots of consistency.
Now, how did COVID affect these numbers? What, pre-COVID, how would this have looked?
well, in 2020, the year before, that you saw the beach attendance just skyrocket, but you also saw it go down as well when we closed the beach.
Sure.
So rescues were up, attendance was up, all of our stats, like prevention ads, the prevents, the rescues.
Yeah, reaching out to public education and stuff, is that affected?
Absolutely. So every spring we go to all the elementary schools
Yep.
and talk to the third, fourth, and fifth, and sixth graders, and we do in-person presentations.
Mm-hmm.
We also go to the different civic groups, and because of COVID in 2020, we did not participate in that.
Right.
And that's a huge thing for for us is education, right? 90% of our, actually it's probably closer to 96% of our rescues come from rip currents. So inform the public, educate them, know what a rip current is, know how to get out of it. So without the ability to go to the schools, we weren't able to provide that education. So that winter, after March of 2020, I had staff put together and you guys saw the video, the ocean safety video that's about 20 minutes long. And so we were able to provide a link to access that video to the schools, and actually it was well received, and it went to a lot of outside schools as well. So that was a plus.
Yeah.
So
Who produces those?
in-house,
Really?
yeah,
Got some technical people there.
yeah, we have some talented people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job. Okay.
Since our last meeting, did you actually have lifeguard tryouts?
Yeah, we had tryouts on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's at 7 o'clock check-in. We had 13 people, no, 20 people apply online. We had a little bit more than that show up. A lot of no-shows from the people online. I think that's a common thread for people that are unemployed. They have to seek employment and have to show proof that they're applying for positions. We only had 20 applicants, which I'm still really stoked about because Huntington had really low numbers about 3-4 weeks ago. Newport only had 30 people try out, and they typically have 100. Last year we had 26. This year we had 20. But the good news is, I only need 2.5 people.
How many passed?
I say that because there's one shift that. But anyways,
How many passed?
we had 17 passed. We had 1 DNF and 2 didn't make the cutoff time. So anybody makes the cutoff time, they move on to the second event, which is a run, swim, run. You do a 400 yard run, 400 yard swim, 400 yard run. All we passed that. Took 17 into an interview, and once you go into an interview, you're all equal. It doesn't matter if you're first or. In fact, the last probably 3-4 years, the person who's been in the top place hasn't got into training, which is a tough one to try to communicate to parents because their child won the event. But yeah, we took 11 and we invited 11 into training. So they'll start late March and end late April. We do 100 plus hours of academy, and then out of that 11, you know, I joke when I say 2.5, and you really 3, right? But you always have people who say they're going to come back, and an internship comes up or something else comes up, and so you have usually 3 or 4 others.
When's the research for seasonal?
First one, we have two research classes. First one is March 6th and 7th, and then the last one is April 30th and May 1st. And they'll do 20 hours.
How are the conditions that day?
Not the way we would like to see it.
Yeah.
You know, the long range said it was going to be 6 to 8, so we were all, but it was just 2 to 3.
Yeah.
The water was 58.
That's why 17 out of 20 days.
You're right.
58.
Yeah.
That would keep me out.
Yeah.
How's progress on that facility move coming? Do you know? Heard anything out of that study when they want to relocate your office?
It's narrowed down to 2 site locations, and we just had a meeting last week for they shared some designs and then also what our needs are and also what Captain Benfield's needs are for equipment and whatnot. So that they're going back to review some of that work, and then I think we have another meeting in March.
Do you have an overwhelming preference?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the most functional way to operate a left-guard operation is being on the west side of the tracks.
Okay. Oh, and one of the possible.
Yeah, well, that was part of the.
Like in the parking lot or something? Is that what?
No, it's on the east side of the tracks where Park Del Mar is. It's built into the hillside, so you have the tracks separating you, which adds a lot of different constraints. That so my preference would be move it back, all the way back as far as you can, and do 2-story. Cut the footprint down to 50%.
Because it's a 2-story.
Yeah, 2-story, and have a drive-through garage and put the restrooms at Linda Lane and combine that with the headquarters. So then you're giving all the beach towel space back to the public because you're basically on the asphalt.
So you have kind of a Sally Port drive-through kind of thing.
Yeah, so let's say this is headquarters, and along this way underneath the vehicles we go in and out with the public works and also sheriff's vehicles.
And then
But
direct
I think you're
access
getting-
from that port right into the building.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Orange County Fire Authority also had some input on this. What is the relationship?
OCC.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
They have beach patrol, so they have their vehicles.
Captain Malott entertained me morning a week or so ago, and I took a tour of his facility. Even though it's 1960s,
68.
it's in pretty good shape, but yeah, it's showing its age, but he's running a really nice ship out there. And I encourage, if you haven't been to that, take a look around, do that, because it's an icon, obviously, at the beach with a clock tower, but there's a lot going on inside the building, and a lot of tools and equipment and things that you need every day. Plus your garage over there too, your equipment, so, with the sheriff's department, so. Very, very informative, thank you on that one. Good. Any other questions for marine safety? Okay. New business. Consideration ordinance to establish minimum staffing for fire emergency response vehicles. You're on, Chief.
Okay. Well, I've been asked today to initiate the discussion in your committee to codify four-person staffing on fire engines and fire trucks in the city of San Clemente. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to really get into why we at the OCFA are making such a strong effort to convert our existing three-person engines all four-person and why that's so important to us. So I apologize for I'll explain a few things to you. To support of the city ordinance would demonstrate your commitment to provide four-person staffing on our engines and trucks in your city. I'm a strong proponent of four-person staffing. My views regarding appropriate staffing levels will result from my personal experiences being assigned to several of our county's busiest fire stations. I've observed the value of proper staffing on fire equipment. I've seen firsthand that a crew of 4 can operate more safely and more efficiently than a crew of 3. And I've had to consider limitations of 3-person crews as I've made tactical decisions in a variety of emergencies over the years. The city of San Clemente has challenges in itself as you evaluate fire and EMS services and coverage. The city is part of a large regional fire and EMS system that has full access to a depth of resources. Although there are many resources that are shared in the city on a daily basis as part of the OCFA and mutual aid agreements, with surrounding jurisdictions, the geography presents a challenge that many of us have discussed and we've spent some time. But it presents a challenge with the reflex time to move additional resources down to our city from cities to the north of us. This magnifies the need to ensure San Clemente fire stations are properly staffed and not overly reliant on surrounding resources. The importance of adequate staffing levels is magnified even more by the increase in population and call volume that we've seen throughout Orange County. The city of San Clemente has been serviced by 3 fire stations since prior to the transition to the OCFA in 1994. In the early 2000s, Talago was developed, which added approximately 9,000 residents. Since 2000, we've seen an increase of 30% in our city population. Also, since 2000, we've seen a 95% increase in call volume, yet we're still operating out of the 3 existing original fire stations. A positive increase occurred in 2017 as the documents that were included in our agenda package. As a response to the San Clemente hospital closure, when the city worked closely with the OCFA to add a 4th firefighter paramedic on engine 50 to bring the number of paramedic units from 2 up to 3. This brought both engines and ladder truck all up to 4-person staffing and significantly increased the level of protection in our community. Prior to this, the north end of the city relied on paramedic services and resources from Dana Point multiple times per day. As you can see in these documents, we're currently on year 5 of an 8-year agreement to phase in that 4th firefighter on engine 50. And as you can see on year 1, OCFA shouldered the burden of the cost, and then year 8, the city will shoulder the complete burden of that cost of that additional firefighter. So we assisted with an 8-year phase-in. One thing to also point out, OCFA has converted most of their 3-0 staffing to 4-person staffing We have a handful of stations left, of which we're still converting one a year, with the goal that all of our units in the next handful of years will be 4.0 staffing. A little bit about background and standards that support why we feel so strong about 4.0 staffing. We've talked a little bit about the challenges in San Clemente, and some of those challenges because of your geography and resources only coming from one direction, for the most part from the north. But then there's some standards to show that it's nationally what the goals and expectations are. The NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, conducted a study back in April of 2010, and it clearly articulated 4-person crews can accomplish more work more quickly with a greater margin of safety and less physiological stress on firefighters. Some of the notable findings: 4-person crews operate in a low hazard structure fire, which would be typical to a house fire. Completed the same number of fireground tasks on average 5.1 minutes faster than a 3-person crew. 15.4 minutes versus 20.3 minutes for a 3-person crew. Marks an improvement by 4-person crews of nearly 25% over that of a 3-person crew. NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, 1710 requires that fire departments have the capability to deploy an initial first alarm, which is 17 individuals, to a scene within 8 minutes. An effective response force was assembled by 5-person crews a full 3 minutes prior to that of 4-person crews. It is important to note that by definition, 2- and 3-person crews were unable to meet that standard during their experiments. Water on fire, the difference between a 3-person crew and a 4-person crew. 3-person is 11 minutes, 24 seconds. A 4-person crew, 11 minutes and 11 seconds. The effect of crew size on physiological strain. Average heart rates for members of smaller crews were higher. Danger is increased for smaller crews because the stress on firefighting keeps the heart rates elevated beyond the maximum heart rate for duration of the fire response. So the higher heart rate maximums were maintained for sustained time intervals. Another standard, the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA 1710. It states fire company staffing requirements shall be based on minimum levels necessary for safe, effective, and efficient emergency operations. It defines a fire company whose primary functions are that to pump and deliver water, perform basic firefighting at fires, including search and rescue. That's the definition of an engine. They state engine companies shall be staffed with a minimum of 4 on-duty personnel. Conversely, with fire companies' primary functions are to perform a variety of services associated with truck work, such as forcible entry, ventilation, search and rescue, aerial operations. They're known as a truck company, and it states that fire companies shall be staffed with a minimum of 4 personnel on duty. Firestroke is an agency that's made up of all the fire agencies within California. One of the big things, they're the ones that created the ICS system. They're also one of the big things they've done is they've typed and standardized fire equipment. So when you say, I need a Type 1 fire engine, you know what you're getting. A Type 1 helicopter, a Type 2 helicopter, you know what you're getting. There's standards that are recognized up and down the state and even outside of the state of California. So Firestroke 13.1, minimum incident command standard for Type 1 engines. And so as an example, it requires a 1,000-gallon pump per minute, a minimum of 400 gallons in their water tank, 20-foot extension ladder, personnel 4 minimum. ICS standard for Type 1 truck company like you have in the city, a minimum of 75-foot ladder, elevated master streams 500 gallons, minimum 4-person staffing. Here's another one that's really affected the way we do business, and that's the California Code of Regulations, Title 8, which is respiratory protection at work, which is regulated by CalOSHA. Procedures for interior structure firefighting, in addition to the requirements set forth under Section G3, in interior structure fires, the employer shall ensure that at least 2 employees enter ideal age, so immediately dangerous to life and health, a smoke-filled building. At least 2 employees shall enter IDLH and remain visible or voice contact with one another at all times. At least 2 employees are located outside the IDLH atmosphere. All employees engaged in interior surgical firefighting use shall wear SCBAs. And if you look, so I've brought a couple of them, but what we've done is we've created our internal policies so that we can, so that we can make sure that we're maintaining the 2 in, 2 out rule. The rapid intervention crew, the 2 in, 2 out requires a crew of 4 to make entry into a building. There is a rescue exception if there's a known life inside. Outside of that, for us to start firefighting on an incipient fire inside requires 4 individuals. Our RIC team, rapid intervention crew, so the crew that's outside by our policy and national standards is a crew of 4 to be outside. So if you're seeing everything's adding up, the difference between 3-person and 4-person crews is significant. By every measure, you can examine 4-person versus 3-person staffing. The evidence is clear that 4-person staffing provides the best protection for our community and the firefighters. The OCFA stands united in our support of 4-person staffing. We urge you to demonstrate commitment to public safety and to our community and firefighters by adopting this ordinance. We recognize that the passage of the ordinance can be overturned by future city actions and councils, but we do feel strongly it will accomplish 2 very important things. First, it sends a clear message to the public and our firefighters that you have heard them say public safety must be a budgetary and policy priority, and that we all agree. Second, it identifies a reduction in crew staffing as an item that should not be taken under consideration by future city councils. This is a no-cost request. It's just a desire to maintain what we currently have. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Do we have any strike teams?
Strike teams?
You send someone out in a strike team?
Yes.
And they require 4 people when you can go out?
So for the Type 1 engines, they require 4-person. For the Type 3 engines, so Station 50 cross staffs Type 3 engine. By ICS, it requires 3. We always send 4. We add the 4th to it.
Is that the one without the big ladder?
That's the one, the higher, it's raised higher, it's 4-wheel drive.
Okay, like a bush wagon.
Right.
Okay.
So what we do, and even if it's an immediate need, structures are being threatened, we'll get them on the road. But since 50s is 4-person, but we have, out of 18 Trabuco Canyon, it's currently 3-person. We're in the process of making the station bigger so we can add the 4th. If that engine goes out, immediate need, goes out with 3, and then what we do is we augment with that 4th person. We'll literally drive somebody up there to get that 4th person.
And explain when you get a paramedic response, and a paramedic has got to go to mission. What happens to the engine company that remains?
So there's 3 options. So a medical aid, basic life support, a twisted ankle. Remember, the private ambulance company has EMTs. So we provide your paramedic level evaluation and assessment. Our paramedics will arrive on scene. Requirement by OC, Orange County EMS standards, is 2 paramedics. That's the definition of paramedic unit. There's different ways of getting 2 paramedics there. We put 2 of them on a fire engine. Your engine will go with 2 paramedics, evaluate if it's a twisted ankle, and the EMTs can monitor the person and bring them to the hospital. The engine will go back in service, so the pump's in service. There's 4 individuals, 2 paramedics. If it's a moderate call, so somebody fainted, they're very stable, their vitals are stable. We don't expect any changes between the scene and the hospital, but it's an advanced life support level call. We'll start an IV, we'll do heart monitoring, we will give oxygen, paramedic level call, but it's stable. So what we'll do is we will send that 1 paramedic in the back of the private ambulance with the EMT, and they will monitor the patient to the hospital. The engine will stay in the city. We still have a pump. Yes, it's a 3-person crew, but it's better than nothing. The other thing we've done is we've bought a complete second set of medical gear. So that engine stays in service in the city. It has a pump, 3 firefighters, and it also has one of the paramedics stay behind with a full set of gear. We call that a paramedic assessment unit. So when you look at an additional call that comes in, that engine will respond with 3 people, but by county EMS, it takes 2 paramedics. So we have to send another engine, your truck or engine 60, so we'll be tying up 2 units. But your response time is still decreased because your first 2 engine has paramedic with a full set of gear. You start the assessment, you can start treatment. Ultimately, the paramedic engine will show up. If it's a BLS level call, we can cancel that paramedic unit, keep them free in the city. You still would have 2. If it's a paramedic level call, an ALS level call, then they will take the patient to Mission Hospital. Once again, that initial engine will go back in service through person. The third option is a critical call, unstable patient, trauma call, cardiac arrest. Takes 2 paramedics to treat that patient in the back of the ambulance all the way to the hospital. Both paramedics will get in the back of the ambulance with the private EMT. They will go to the hospital. The engine will follow up. They'll be out of the city. They'll follow up, retrieving their 2 paramedic firefighters and bring them back to the station. So those are kind of the 3 options, and that's how we've built in. One of the things that's in your contract with Care Ambulance is that we call it the Return the Medic program. They will return. So when one paramedic goes to the hospital, that because your ambulances are dedicated to the city, when they come back to the city, they'll return that paramedic to the station, enabling that initial engine to stay in service. Even though it's 3-person, but at least it's something.
Good presentation, good answers.
Sure.
How's the holding the wall problem affect that stuff?
So it's the same with the ambulances, right? It ties up resources.
Yeah.
That's why it's even more important to have the Return the Paramedic program. About 10% of our calls require both medics to follow up in the back.
Okay.
So the majority of our calls where we're sending a paramedic to the hospital, we're able to leave that 3-person truck, 3-person engine, at least you have something in the city. Or additional medical aid or for a smaller incipient fire. While it's 3-person, right, you can't do 2 in, 2 out, so you do have some limitations, but your surrounding resources are coming. So that Return the Medic program has been important. Countywide, that Return the Medic program was ceased during the last COVID surge that we had because the ambulance companies couldn't, outside of San Clemente, didn't have enough ambulance companies to keep up. So it actually stopped that, so that was a step backwards in the program. San Clemente was able to maintain it. It's in your contract, and your ambulances are dedicated to the city, so that's been a positive thing. So yes, wall time, it's keeping all of our resources, but we haven't seen a significant change in our stats with ALS response and ALS response times during the COVID upsurge.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question here. I guess several questions actually. In this document, the budget for 2018-2019, it basically says the addition of a 4th firefighter on rotation for this
page?
Page 110, 110.
Okay.
Yeah, the paragraph down there, not the one up from the bottom. When I read that, it says the 4th firefighter was implemented by the Orange County Fire Authority at the beginning of fiscal year 2017-18. I read this, and you already have the authority for a 4th firefighter.
That's correct.
But you're asking for one now, so I'm a little confused about. It's already here. It's in the budget. Do we need?
Well, Committee Member Hightower, I think I can clarify. The item before you was put on the agenda by the City Council. Mayor Pro Tem Duncan specifically requested that this item be brought to the Public Safety Committee to determine the committee's support for an ordinance amendment requiring that 4th firefighter. Right now, it's contractually based.
Oh, okay, it's paid for. That's the no-cost part you mentioned.
Correct.
Oh,
So
okay.
it currently exists.
I
It's
see.
paid for, it's in the budget.
You're right. Okay.
But 10 years down the road from now,
Yeah.
15 years down the road from now, when budgets get tight, this would, I guess, help to add another step in the process and with future city councils, let them know the importance of this fourth firefighter when we start making budget discussions. And the other, to be completely transparent, the other piece of it, OCFA has 4-person engine companies, 4-person paramedic companies. So even the possibility of going down that route in the future, obviously we can't force the city with any of their contract, but we don't make 3-person paramedic engines. We're not starting 3-person. When we just offered the Fullerton, all of their units were 4-person. So creation of new 3-person engine companies isn't something that we're doing. But it's just another step in the process to show the importance of it for future members and councils and fire department personnel when we're all truly retired.
I can jump in though. One of the reasons it got sent here is because we do have a couple of city council members that have expressed the interest to explore somehow getting 3-person fire stations.
Can you make an argument that the cost would be less since you don't have to do it
Well,
by
the cost would be
overtime?
less.
You know, overtime pay, you actually have that 4th person?
It's actually the inverse of that. So a
Yeah.
person with overtime, paying overtime, so if you look on the way that it's funded, like this year, the full funding is going to San Clemente, but all 3 positions are overtime. And then if you look at the cost of a full employee with benefits, it actually increases it. So it's cheaper to do it with overtime. So 3 overtime positions, $503,000, 3 regular positions, and of course they've added a little bit as years go on, $778,000. So the cost of benefits outweighs the cost of the overtime.
Because the benefits are 50%
Right.
of the
Oh,
salary.
yeah, there's significant
So
overtime.
Years ago, it wasn't that way, but
No.
it's become that way.
It's upside down now.
Yeah, and also Charlie, a year or so ago in the SC Times, a letter to the editor, we had someone write about trying to decrease fire crews so we could afford in other places. And the person wasn't real knowledgeable on it, stated about how few fires we had and stuff, not knowing that most of these guys go on medical aids nowadays and stuff, and certain things. So I think it's a good idea to do it. I don't want council members coming in and decide we're going to start decreasing staffing in the public safety division. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, well, my experience up there in Utah, the fire board was 2 in, 2 out is a real driver for the safety of your fire personnel, really, and that's really important. And you didn't mention too much about safety, but that would be my consideration. Having a 4th person there would help that enormously.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference.
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion.
Is that
Okay,
what we're looking for?
I'll just start talking about the motion I think you want to make.
Okay.
Um,
You're going by the San Diego one that they already passed? Is that you're going to use as your template?
Hold on.
Essentially, I believe so. However, what we're asking the committee to look at right now is just a recommendation to the city council to initiate an amendment to the San Clemente Municipal Code to require a 4th firefighter on fire emergency response vehicles. That will give staff, specifically OCFA, and I believe it would be Chief Capobianco and our city attorney working on the actual ordinance. That'll give them the direction to bring something to council to have them introduced.
Okay, so nothing's even been drafted yet or looked at?
There are templates from other cities that would we would rely on.
The San Diego one was really good.
Well,
Okay.
maybe I should make that motion, so that
Sure.
you don't have to make them all today.
I appreciate it.
So my motion is whatever he said.
You mean ditto?
Technically, that works.
Is
Sorry, I
there a
could've told you that
second here?
before.
Hey,
Smart, very good.
whatever he said. All in favor?
You got it.
Aye.
Well, somebody has to second it first.
I did.
All right.
We did it. 4-0.
Thank you for your support.
Well,
Good presentation.
thank you for being here. Yeah.
Chair Burkita,
Yes, sir.
just an agenda scheduling item. I know for the human trafficking project update, we have a member of the public here to assist. It's up to the committee, but if you would not mind reordering the agenda, bring that item up to discuss next.
I see no objection to reordering. Let's do it.
Do you want to?
Yeah, certainly. Well, before I start, let me introduce Brenda Wells, who's the CEO of the
We saw her
I-5
last
Freedom
night,
Network.
really.
Yeah, she's been here before.
In the person, rather than
Yeah.
Zoom.
3D.
Yeah.
Glad you made it here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing, I guess, I felt just as a citizen of Orange County, the tragedy over the weekend, the helicopter crashed in the ocean up there by Newport Beach and we lost one of our officers. I just feel so bad about that whole thing. So, sure.
No hard technology.
We're thinking it not. And I noticed the Orange County Sheriff Department stepping in now to provide helicopters to Huntington Beach Police Services will make up for that loss of their helicopters. Okay, back to human trafficking. Chris Duncan not too long ago directed us to look into what we can do about addressing this issue. I was in the committee here, the ad hoc committee, led the effort. Rick Lefloffer was contributed. Brenda Wells, really a real help there. And then Chris Duncan, our mayor pro tem, he also participated in a couple of meetings that we had. So next slide, please. First of all, what is human trafficking? It's a little trickier than I thought, actually. But there's two types of human trafficking. One is item A there, the sexual trafficking. It's called the Commercial Sex Act, seduced by fraud, force, and so forth. Really, you could replace the word commercial with criminal action. It means it's like a corporation. It's got a CEO. It's got a godfather. All sorts of things like that. Labor trafficking is similar, but it doesn't have the sexual aspect to it. And of course, then in the real world, it's kind of a gray area. Both of these things mix, and you can't really sometimes tell the difference. The next slide, please. Again, this is a big industry. I didn't really realize how big it was until Brenda talked to us about it a little bit. And one of the reasons it's an issue here in San Clemente is we're a destination city. And people come here and they expect to be entertained and so forth. And these companies can profit from relying on these people for businesses. But the point with this chart was we're not here to really, well, let me put it this way. Massage parlors or massage establishments really are beneficial to the community. We really don't want to do anything to put them out of business. My wife and I have gone to hotels and had massages, and it's all part of the experience.
Let's just back up a little bit here.
Yeah.
Let's just go on to the next slide.
Oh, you didn't want to hear about my experience at the massage parlor?
We'll talk about it later.
Anyway, the point is, we're looking at the criminal aspects of massage parlors, not the benefits. Next slide.
You're gonna get your sunglasses on still.
Okay. And it turned out during the Super Bowl in the register, I guess it was on Saturday, it turns out that the Orange County Sheriff's Department really had a crew out there at the Super Bowl, a week before Super Bowl, trying to take care of some of the problems with the hotels. And in fact, here's some of the summary. I mean, there were 56 arrests made. Some of them misdemeanors, some felonies, 16 victims they rescued. 2 of those victims were under 18. They were young people. And they were taken care of by going to various organizations, the Waymakers and then the Orange County Social Service Department. And in talking to Brenda here, I guess before that, I don't know if you were involved in that directly, but you might want to just tell us what you did here.
So we were part of an outreach called the South LA Anti-Trafficking Coalition, and we were invited to, they were doing an outreach in multiple areas, specifically around the Super Bowl timing and region. And so we were invited to bring resources to the hotels in the Inglewood area. And so with a team of volunteers, we went out in pairs and gave them resources and content and numbers to call to be prepared for what they've probably already seen. But now they know that there's going to be an uptick. And we had varying responses from the hotels, but we were able to get our information to 69 hotels around that time, specifically in the Inglewood area.
Excellent.
This whole SLAATC, we call it SLATC, included a massage, establishment outreach, track, women, people on the tracks, strip clubs and hotels, all kinds of the activities. So we all kind of spread out in these particular lanes relating to this. Yeah.
Thank you, Brenda. Let's see, the goals after Chris Duncan came in here and kind of told us to get on this task. These were the 4 tasks that we were going to talk about. One was talk to the I-5 Freedom Network staff, learn a little bit about the problem. And then there was an issue of, the San Juan Capistrano has ordinances about massage parlors, and how do they compare with the massage parlor ordinances, rules, and laws here that we have in San Clemente. And then finally come back to the Public Safety Committee, which we're doing today, with some additional recommendations that the City Council should reflect on and perhaps consider supporting. Not necessarily an ordinance, but some actions that they could take. Excellent. The first thing I took a look at was the San Juan Capistrano ordinances, particularly from the police enforcement. And there are a lot of sections in there, and it's showing here what the police can do over there to deal with this situation over there. So, and there's a lot. So basically their hands aren't tied behind their back. They can help and contribute to licensing, renewal of massage parlor license and inspections and so forth. So with that then, next slide, look at the same ordinances here in San Clemente. These are all the titles and chapters that apply to the policing, or in this case, Orange County Sheriff's Department. Basically, if you read all that, it's just pretty much identical, pretty much an overlap. And that was the conclusion here. And in fact, in November of 2020, the City Council here actually formally included in the contract to the Orange County Sheriff's Department the ability to implement these ordinances. Next slide. So about code enforcement, if you do the same thing and you look at the San Juan Capistrano ordinances, and there's a myriad of them, there are a whole lot of them, and you compare them with Titles 5 and 17 and the San Clemente zoning ordinance, there are 20.069, which has to do with massage parlors. You find that they're essentially the same, a little bit different organization, but the words and the intent and everything is pretty much the same. And in fact, I think even the San Clemente ordinance, is the way it's presented, is more effective than the San Juan Capistrano ordinances. Okay, next slide, please. When the City Council here in San Clemente updated the zoning ordinances, Title 5 and 17, back in November of 2020, I think it was August 2020, the I-5 Freedom Network brought to the council a number of recommendations, I-5 recommendations. Brenda's organization did that. And in fact, the zoning staff did just a really outstanding job, at least in my opinion from reading it, implementing all their recommendations into places in those 2 titles. So that was really a significant accomplishment by the City Council. So the next slide then, basically after a couple of meetings, Chris Duncan was involved, Brenda, Rick, myself, we came to a realization that, we have the good ordinances. Now what does San Clemente need? What are they lacking? And we came up with 3 different recommendations for the city. One was the priority 1 there. Rick, I don't know, you want to talk about priority 1, which is the...
And this is with the input of Councilmember Duncan, or Mayor Pro Tem Duncan. So I think it's probably pretty accurate as to what he thinks the direction of the city should go. And as you can see, while we have code enforcement, we'd like to see maybe a member of code enforcement become a designated subject matter expert in the massage parlor area. And that person should be afforded all the training necessary to give them the expertise needed to effectively enforce our massage parlor laws and also make the periodic inspections. I think we need to strengthen, or we think we need to strengthen that, have a more aggressive, possibly, part of code enforcement as far as the periodic inspections and whatever. And so basically we think it would be probably the best way to do that would be to have somebody that was initially had the responsibility of that. I don't think we have that now, do we? Or
Code enforcement cases are assigned based on complexity. The person that would be responding to these types of complaints right now is the person who was involved in the investigation that led to the closure of the last massage business that we were involved in. As far as periodic inspections, that's a change to how we operate. We are complaint-based. When we get a complaint, and I will say this has been a benefit when we are accused of harassing or being arbitrary and capricious. We respond to issues when we get complaints about those issues. When it comes to massage establishments, human trafficking is typically it's hard to say it's identified, but what OCSD will do is that their vice squad will do periodic inspections, and when they find that sexual favors are being exchanged for money, they'll write a report and they'll send it to the DA, and then they'll send it to us. And if they send it to us, then we do have some teeth that we can deal with. I don't know the last massage establishment that the DA shut down, but I do know that our ordinances have affected a number of them. When I was processing the massage establishment code amendment back in 2015, which is what most of these regulations are actually based on. I think at the time there were like 30 massage establishments around town. Just the initial the massage establishment business license process knocked out like, I want to say 10 or 12 of them. And then over the years, I think...
Is that when the state turned the opportunity to regulate back to the cities?
Yes. Yeah. So then a couple years later, we had talked, and I connected you back with planning, because I had been over in code at that time. And then some additional regulations were put in place. So as far as staff in code enforcement, I am very familiar with the regulations. But I helped draft a lot of what we have. A lot of it was borrowed from other cities, but that was a two-title amendment between the business license functions and the zoning requirements for massage establishments. So most of what is being requested here in Priority 1 is it's already in place, with the exception of what was verbally described as periodic inspections. Periodic inspections for code compliance staff would be reviewing the facade of the building, the front entry of the building. We could look at the rooms, but all we would be able to do would be to assure that everybody has the right license within the business, that the business is providing all the facility, supervisory, and operational requirements of the code. anything related to identifying prostitution or the victimization
I
of.
think you're seeing something
that's
that-
not what we're
No, that's not what we're saying at all. It's
Yeah.
not- So what is the schedule? How often do you inspect business licenses at a massage parlor? I mean, do you have to wait till there's a complaint, or do you go in there a few times a year and do it?
No, we regulate. You have to understand, code compliance regulates a large amount of things. I would love to have somebody that's just an expert in just massage establishments, but then I'd need somebody who's an expert in, a million different things. And I can read off a list of what our top 3 priority areas are. It covers everything that everybody else doesn't, and so it's hard to start narrowing focuses down on everything because they work on so many topical areas that when it comes to a massage establishment, honestly, if we get a complaint about it, we need to go and review what the code is. I mean, there's a lot of regulations here, and when you're talking about the facility operational requirements, sanitary requirements, what they wear, there's probably 50 specific laws related to what they need to do, and it's just nobody's ever going to be able to hold all that information in their head. They need to provide all of that every year during the massage establishment business license review process, and that was one of the things we did in 2015. Was they don't go through a normal business license review. They go through the review checklist that I created after creating this business license type is 4 or 5 pages of just codes that the people who review those licenses need to ensure that all of that they're meeting all of these requirements.
Question on that is it that you have lack of staff, or is it just onerous on that person? Because what I'm getting from you is you don't have the staff to do that right now.
Right now, we don't.
Okay.
But
If you had the staff.
If we had the
could do
staff, we could set up periodic
Okay.
inspections.
There you go.
Fair enough.
Perfect.
But I think you've got a city
But I will
council
say-
now that's sympathetic to your issue, from
I-
what I understand.
No, absolutely. I mean, the city council is doing what they need to do.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is that we are dealing with enforcement, and that puts us in a legal position of addressing particular businesses specially.
Okay.
So,
And I'm telling you, we have received complaints about our enforcement of massage establishments in the
Oh,
past
sure.
when nothing was found.
Well, okay, but
I think what we're proposing is that to change what you're looking for. We don't want Vice to go in there and undercover and try and get a solicitation. Because what that results in is having an option or a requirement to address that individual who we see as the victim, not the perpetrator.
Yes.
So it's not, we don't think it's strategic to go in there trying to do an undercover op to get a solicitation. What we think is a better approach is going in there, getting them on code violations and training those code compliance people that when they're going in there looking for, whatever OSHA standards, can they see also, is there evidence of people living here? Is there evidence of these things? And then they report that back to the city so that can be addressed appropriately. We don't want them to start making determinations whether there's trafficking in there, but if they start to find the indicators, which is what the training would involve with, they can report that, to the appropriate individual.
You would be
we have-
preventing things, not enforcing things, really. That's
No,
what- that's
that makes perfect sense. I'm
Yeah.
telling you that that this would be a change in our operations in 2 specific ways. One is we are complaint based. That's the first. We do not inspect all kinds of businesses periodically, and there's a lot of businesses. There's a lot of even residential properties that other cities may have yearly rental inspections to ensure that they're habitable living conditions. We don't have the staffing for a change like that creates something further down the line.
All right.
I would want to get council direction
Right.
specifically to devote only a certain amount of time to this one issue. Because
And that's
we would
certainly up to
get-
the council. You're absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not telling you what to do. We have no power to tell you what to do.
We're just asking, what do you need to do this thing? And that's
It would be specific direction, and once we're fully.
I'm sure the
staffed.
council will ask you, gee, can we do that? You're gonna tell them no, and they'll probably just go like this. But if that's what they wanna do, that's what they wanna do.
And I think, I also want to point out that I think the reason why we're in this meeting right now is because council members James and Duncan saw what the San Juan City Council were able to do, and it was a proactive model, not a reactive model. So if that's what's necessary to happen, that's what we need to let them know, that a reactive model is not going to achieve the results that they're hoping for. And if you are able to support that with staff, that's probably the right.
When you say complain, so you go in a massage parlor and a guy or a woman goes, oh, you don't check the grease traps at the restaurants. Well, that's a complaint, but is that really going to deter you? Oh, well, I'm stepping out. I find that amusing because selective enforcement is something that's done everywhere in the police department and in code enforcement in other cities. And people complain, but okay, people complain. I don't think that.
Well,
should
I
be a
mean,
deterrent.
like the complaints that I'm talking about complaints against, the massage establishment could either be from somebody going there or most likely one of their neighbors.
No, what I mean is when you say they complain because you're looking at one business more than another, I thought that would be from the person running the business. Wasn't that what you were saying?
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I don't understand. So they complain. There's no legal basis for. I mean, they can complain.
When you say periodic inspection, are you talking about annually, semi-annually?
Well, I don't know because I don't think we're doing it really at all. Maybe once a year now. I think if every 3 months you go and see if there's a business. You don't have to look at every aspect of a business when you go in and do a code inspection. It could just be if you got your business license posted.
When they go in, what are the main things that we'll be looking for in that? And I
Well, it's
know-
code enforcement. It would be
Like the
to-
fire department goes in things, they check the fire extinguisher, they look for electrical hazards, things put in front of panels and things like that. And
I know there's-
occupancy too. If someone's sleeping in a residential area, in a commercial area, they're not supposed to, that's a hazard too. So, but that's you say periodically, we used to do it once a year, every commercial building in the city. So are we saying that every massage parlor in the city is going to be inspected annually?
Well,
What are the things that?
that's up to the council, Joe. But what have we got? 5 massage parlors here now. So if you went in every
I
6
think we have
months,
12.
12. Oh, we did. Okay, even 12. But we did.
up on
I
this.
might
I
be-
know. Well,
I might be wrong.
That's Charlie. Charlie seems to know about the massages. So, but I mean, if you had 12 and did it every 6 months, I just don't think that would
Does
be.
fire still go on annual inspections on commercial?
They're actually now every 3 years.
It's every 3 years now.
State mandated,
Yeah.
so schools and hospitals and.
Massage
we're still
parlors?
in- Don't go those.
and you're not looking for vice violations when you go in. That's not what a code enforcement person is looking to see that the business is being conducted under the regulations of the city.
That's what they'll be looking for?
Exactly.
We would be looking for the operational sanitary facility
Absolutely.
and management
But the optics of going
Title
in,
5
the
and Title
optics going
7.
in
But
would
we-
probably
yeah. And we would want those
the
code
owners want to
enforcement
comply
people
with everything.
to be
period.
trained on indicators of
Yeah.
additional behavior. Again, not to make any decisions, but just to report. When I was there inspecting, that there was a sink and people signage,
chained
whatever's
to it.
up there.
Doors were locked, the tire was in a.
We also noted that these particular indicators were present. You turn it, to the people and they get to decide what to do with it. But if we don't train them for that, then all we're doing is making sure that they have their business license posted. And that doesn't serve the cause.
What indicators would we look for that would result in us turning any of that information over to somebody else?
There's a list of them in there,
I
here.
could go over, I read them all, there's so many, there's 7, like you mentioned earlier, there's 60 or 70 different requirements on what not to do in a massage parlor.
Yeah.
No locks
Well,
on
again, I don't
doors,
think we can
no
hammer out the
locked
process here, nor
windows,
do I think we're supposed to.
closed, yeah.
We would just make sure that those indicators
Certain
are
toys
available to the
can't be
code
on
compliance
display.
people, and if they just, again, don't decide what it is, just report what you saw.
The city
Yeah.
council is looking for recommendation expressly from the city council subcommittee on human trafficking with participation from them in these recommendations. So I don't know, I'm not a rocket science, but I think that when two city council people have input into these recommendations, they might want to see them.
And staff wants to provide them realistic things that we can do.
And that's what will happen when it goes to the city council and they ask for your input. I'm sure you will be very, very persuasive in exactly what code can do and realistic. And then the city council can decide what they want to do.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to hire 5 more code people that just look into the human trafficking.
Sure.
But probably not. And
It's
you
just-
won't be able to do everything that probably we recommend. And there'll probably be some kind of compromise on it somewhere. I don't know. I'm not a city councilman, so I don't know. But I do know that a city councilman had a great deal of input into this.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the wording that comes from this came directly from that city council person. So I just feel an obligation to go ahead and make the reasonable recommendation and let the chips fall where they may.
Can I probably should move ahead. We got 2 other priority items, and we kind of beat Adam to death on this.
Well,
So let's beat on the city council.
let me just say
Go ahead.
what my concerns are moving forward. Are you going to cover where this goes next?
Where this
Yes,
was.
that's why we're here,
Are we-
basically, yeah.
Okay, but there's a plan for this committee to send a recommendation to council
Right.
Correct.
on something.
Yes.
Okay.
You're kind of looking at what the recommendation probably was going to be.
Okay. And so the recommendations,
But they
I would
established-
like to talk more about these details before a recommendation is made for something that we cannot possibly manage expectations for. That's a goal. Like I don't want something being recommended to the council that, I've been involved in the system, in the process at some point, but it's absolutely unrealistic for staff to deal with.
Well, there is a recommendation for a unicorn in there too, so I'm weighing on that.
Well, we can always, that's the easiest thing. We'll just drop
Yeah.
the
Let me finish
barn
this
in
and
the
we'll
back
get
and grab one.
into how we're gonna do it. Is
Okay.
that okay, Dick?
Yes, please.
Okay. So now that we've gone through the code enforcement, priority 2 was, this is really something to get the city involved, as Brenda said, more proactive. The city council members over there, one of them particularly, this is his pet project, is to deal with massage parlors. And some of the things we thought are in the hotel, motel business compliance. Let's get them on board, get them more educated. State laws, they get a 15-minute training course on human trafficking. It's really not enough. So the city can do things by emphasizing the problem to the local hotels and motels in some sort of a manner. And I included both the sexual and labor trafficking too. And then once they do that, they should reward, make it a positive incentive for the hotels and motels to want to be involved in the activity. This so-called 5-star rating, or give them a badge, or something positive that the city recognizes you're really doing a good job in keeping this kind of business out of the city of San Clemente. So that is what we'd like to see the city council do, be more proactive, and those are 2 ideas there. Priority 3, Brenda, I'm going to let you talk about these other items down here because you really have the background and the capability of doing that. But the one here in the Neighborhood Watch program, Joe and Rick, you guys need to think about perhaps what Brenda's going to talk about later, the kind of facility or educational program and training they have. You might take advantage of that in the
Well, it could
Neighborhood
certainly
Watch
be on the webpage. We could certainly have a button that you could go and get all the information that would be available.
But, yeah. That was another one on the city's webpage. There's a bunch of complaints, Adam, where they can put complaints. Human trafficking is not one of those things that a person that recognizes in their neighborhood can go to. And that really should be added to that particular webpage on the city. But Brenda, you got some really impressive things here about counseling and human trafficking and so forth. Maybe explain to these guys about what you could do with schools.
I talked to Captain Benfield about this too, about bringing just public forums to the city on topics. We did a couple pre-coronavirus that were very well attended. One was specifically on educating the community on what an illicit massage industry and business would look like and how they could be a part of the proactive community engagement piece by identifying it. And then we did another one on, what are the impacts of legalizing prostitution and some of the SB 357, which now, no longer criminal to solicit for the intent of, engaging in prostitution. That's no longer a crime. So it makes it a little harder for us to engage. And so what are the impacts on that? Do we have the capacity to support those kinds of bills? And how would that show up in our community? Plus, proactively addressing youth and parents of youth, like how does social media, how does school, how do predators and traffickers, define and identify vulnerability in any member of our community. So there's just like education series, forums that we could do that when they're supported by the city and our sheriff's police services. I think that they would draw big crowds for the community because, to Adam's point, the ability to do something about this is much bigger than a code compliance or even the sheriff's department can manage. When we mobilize the community that's educated, that knows how to take informed action, that's the better part of success in addressing this issue.
So their eyes and ears is what you're soliciting for.
Mobilizing communities, part of our mission statement. We disrupted the cycle of human trafficking through mobilizing communities, equipping the hospitality industry, legislative advocacy, and then providing survivors of trafficking, tools to reintegrate. So those are how we engage. But when we very first started this cause, I-5, my first thing is I can't do this alone. This has got to be a community-wide effort. The first thing we did was go to the city of San Clemente, and they passed a resolution agreeing that this is a problem that they want to do more about. And this is an opportunity for us to leverage that resolution that they committed to. Get educating the schools and the parents and the mall workers, how to identify what that looks like. Mostly it's how to respond, and recognizing what they're seeing and identifying it properly. But it's just education.
Right.
Mayor Pro Tem Chris Duncan, at one of the meetings, he brought up the fact that we probably should educate in the schools, even middle school, and counselors should be involved. Mm-hmm. You have certain sorts of training and presentations on this problem. Mm-hmm. How would you use that training material for a school counselor or something? How could you make it appropriate for that kind of a situation?
So there's two different audiences when it comes to school. There's the students and there's the grown-ups. And so they'd be very different presentations, and we would do one specifically for the adults, the administration, and the teachers, so that they would know how to respond appropriately and identify some of the vulnerabilities and factors. And then we would have one that was specifically targeted for the language of kids, which is more about peer advocacy. We wouldn't use the words trafficking. We wouldn't use the words victimization. We would use the words, how do you help your friend stay out of trouble? Because it's a lot easier for them to help their friend than it is for them to help themselves. And so just using the language. And then there's lots of expert curriculums out there specifically designed for youth. And we would probably bring a more youthy audience, facilitator in that. So kids that were in college age or just young adult age are the best facilitators for that. But so, we have the strategies on how to reach them. That would have to be invited by either the individual school or the school district. There's already, I don't remember the name of the bill, but there's already a bill in place starting January 2020, that requires educators. I think it's 7th, 9th, and 11th grade, where they're required to bring some moments of education, anti-trafficking education. And there's lots of curriculums for the school to choose from. They don't have to, they have options. Ones that are boy focused, ones that are female, girl focused, ones that are, so they're all defined and optional. But again, the requirements are pretty minimal. How do we do better by our youth?
Brenda's years past as this as I have been about Neighborhood Watch. And I feel that there's so much that needs to be done, and you want the city to help us do it. And as I see in the last couple of years, the city just don't have, nor does the police department, fire, lifeguard, have this ability to do it. Costs are going up. So the more we try to do individually, the more we find out we need help. And I see the same thing with Neighborhood Watch. We've also been trying to say, hey, we got a lot of things we need to be done, and we sure could use some enforcement to hire to help us do that. So maybe there's somewhere in between that they could, that with your group and the neighborhood watch group, that we could get a person that's gonna be committed to these certain things. But the frustration I have found, which I think you're gonna find too, it's really easy. I've come up with a lot of these priorities and stuff, and hey, we gotta do this, that, and then all of a sudden, it's overwhelming. And that's where the reality comes in that I think Adam was talking about here. So whether it's us talking to council members more or what it is, but you try and get a specific plan, it's not specific enough. And
I think one of the first times I learned about this was actually a Neighborhood Watch hosted Anti-Trafficking forum here in San Clemente. It was one of my very first eye-opening events. And what that means to support you. Oh, I don't know what your name is.
I'm Joe.
Joe, hi Joe. So to support what you're saying, Joe, is we have the tools, we have the information, we have the people to bring it. What we are missing is like the endorsement or the support or the credibility that comes with city recognition. And even if that means you put your logo on our flyer so you know that we're working together, it doesn't mean you have to do anything other than provide the endorsement of the work that we're doing.
I think we can get that from the council, the endorsements. It's just the extra hours from city staff is something that's going to be real difficult for both of us to get.
Yeah, I think that's going to show up in the very first one, but I think the rest is community supported and city endorsed.
Yeah, and a leader like you. Yeah.
Maybe 3 like me.
Yeah, no, I know this. I know.
Yeah.
To start. Okay. Anything else?
Nick, that basically summarizes the committee report on this. We were looking for some kind of action out of this. I'm not sure really, frankly, where we go. So Rick, do you have any idea? We were going to make some kind of a motion, that these priorities that be sent up to the city council was our recommendation in response to Chris's direction.
We can, and I'm feeling a little bit of hesitation from Adam, and I respect Adam completely. We fight a lot, but he knows that I do respect him, and I think he respects me sometimes too. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah,
It's a percentage basis.
Yeah. So, but
he doesn't know how to see. That's true.
Yeah, I think we probably should have a little bit more time and discussion for this before we can certainly make a motion. I think we can probably get it passed and send it on, but I would hesitate to do that with a little bit more input from and discussion with that.
I think we table it for.
And if you understand that, I think to really package this thing where it has the best chance of success, I think we need to. Charlie and I should probably, as a subcommittee, can have some conversation with you, and maybe we can work. And I know you're not. I don't feel like you're deterring me from. Look, I don't feel like you're deterring me from making motion and pass on because I know you have no problem with that. But I think, like I say, for getting the best success, I think we should have a little bit more conversation. I think and how that motion should be made.
Yeah, and I would fully support a motion being made after I've had some time to digest exactly.
I know that, and that's why I say why don't we? Can we table this till the next meeting?
I'd be fine setting up a meeting with the two of you and Mrs. Wells, and then putting this on the agenda for next time.
That's what I'm saying. Table this until the next meeting, or bring it back.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to present on what code compliance.
Why don't we meet a couple of weeks and you get your information all together? We'll have some thoughts and we'll all get together. Maybe Chris can even come back to that meeting also, so we can kind of have some council input.
Yeah, and you can identify what you're able to do with your current
Absolutely.
reality and what would it take to get to that reality.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to bring it back at the next meeting.
But you want to have an interim meeting so you can make.
Yeah, we'll figure that out after this.
I will have.
We don't need to table this, do we? Or
well, you have to
there's
bring it
no
back.
motion on
We
the
have to do
floor,
something
so we
with
don't
it.
have to table there.
But I want to bring it back for the next meeting.
So all of the work plan projects are a standing item on every meeting.
Oh,
However,
no notice needs to be given if we're gonna.
No, the notice is in the agenda.
Oh, awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
We're
good.
And it's not a public hearing if you're making a recommendation to council. let's see. What I would probably say is that I would I'd add to the next agenda an actual recommendation that the committee members and staff are eliciting from the committee. That'll formalize it so that people know.
Sounds good.
Easier to, if it's been thought through properly. The wisdom, rather than.
Don't throw that word around so loosely.
It comes with age, right? Yeah. Well, any more on the homeless?
Is my part done here? I can give you your room back?
I think we're done with
Okay.
it. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for letting me
Very
jump
good.
in.
Good
All
to
right.
meet you.
Nice to meet
by the
you
way.
too. Thank you so much for having me.
Well-
You are as tall as I am in this chair. I'm standing on a box right now.
Oh.
All right, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the attention that this issue is getting, and I think it's in the hands of the wisest people in the city, I can tell. All right, thank you, really so
Thank
good to
you.
see you.
You
Thank
too.
you, Charlie.
Okay.
Nice to see you. All right, bye. Okay. That's good.
No, don't go that way.
Need to put some tape or something on those windows.
Ready?
All the other glass in the first floor has this frosted applique, and then there's nothing here. It's just, I'm waiting for somebody to just come right
She
through.
just about did that.
Yeah.
You need
And the wisest people in the city are just.
Well, how about that, you know? Okay, moving right along.
Okay.
All right, communications and disaster preparedness update. Well, we had pretty well beat that one up today. Communications with Bill, and then getting the consultant in here for disaster preparedness. I look forward to some more conversations with both those. Let's see, we did the homeless best management practices just now. Legislative review project update. Anybody have anything on that?
Yeah, real quick, I'm putting together, and I've got more work to do on it, but as opposed to just like the general, like, oh, and by the way, Nick, thanks for this article in the OC Register just a week ago, or less than a week ago, about the Assembly bill and now about labor-related human trafficking. They're trying to pass a bill up there to make it more effective to fight that, not just I guess there's no state task force for labor-related human trafficking, just for sexual-related human. So they're trying to initiate something which is really, really good. But on the other side of it, I'm starting to look at other cities are starting to pass some really interesting laws. I don't know if Captain Benfield knows that Long Beach, they've passed some city ordinances about working on bikes in public illegal, which is kind of interesting since
This item will be coming back to the Public Safety Committee at the March meeting.
right. Okay, so when I heard that, I started looking at what some other cities have been doing to kind of and that's basically directed that for some reason homeless people seem to like to steal bikes. I don't know what the affinity is, but they steal a lot of bicycles. I think probably most of our bike thefts in the city might be homeless related. I mean, we find an awful lot of discarded bikes in homeless camps and whatever that end up stolen. So anyway, a lot of cities are being very creative in some city ordinances that they're passing and things that they're doing. And so I've started to look at what other cities are doing in relationship to both bikes and homelessness. You know, there's a lot of really interesting city ordinances that have been passed. And so I'm going to hopefully bring that back by the next meeting for an update. So that's on the legislative side of it. Can't think of anything else that's really pressing, so I'm trying to just find things now.
We'll keep the input to you.
Yeah, and keep on sending me these articles. Yeah, I only get the Sunday Register, so it's on Sunday. I don't get it. So
that was Saturday.
I know. I missed it by a day.
Okay, Neighborhood Watch Project update. Anything, Joe?
Not a whole bunch. We've been with Bill, and he's got a draft of a webpage for us.
Were you able to pull up that webpage?
He's got to explain it to me. I was able to pull it up, but
Okay.
yeah, so we're gonna
It's
have
the alpha version. So
yeah, he's another level than I am. But anyhow, so we'll meet with him, and you put certain links in there. And one of the links was if the neighborhood watch captain is going to have a meeting, that he could set some parameters and find out what kind of crime is happening there. So Captain Benfield has what crime mapping is called.
Yeah.
So that's going to work out real well for us. We're going to be able to put the parameters, 1,500 feet around a certain residence. That's your watch district, and then they'll be able to pull out what crime has taken place. So when he has his meeting, he'll be able to address certain things. So that was pretty good. So I'm waiting to hear from Jamie about the generic video we're going to have. We'll meet with Bill this month, and we'll probably also set out emails to all of the past neighborhood watch captains to see if they're interested, so we can start filling up the locations. Yeah, is there anything else there, Rick?
No, I mean, the web page is gonna be huge, because then we can start advertising on social media and the San Clemente Times, and hopefully the Orange County Register, that it's available. Go to this site, and there'll be a button that says click if you wanna participate, which will be huge, so.
We couldn't even open, we told us to open it.
I know, I couldn't open it. I know.
Well, you gotta go to your browser and do this and that.
I don't know any of that stuff, so we have to talk to Bill again.
Which bill is this?
And Krutinger.
Oh, okay, he gets involved in that?
Yeah,
too.
he's building the webpage, but
okay.
it's, I need something like Google, I just Google it and I get a
Right, he
website.
needs to push one button.
Yeah,
I need to bring you something like this.
Something user-friendly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or old people friendly.
So yeah, that's it.
Okay, all right. Traffic and e-bike safety project update.
Well,
I don't think we got much on that one.
Yeah, we got to do. Well, we should do something on the side. This is essentially the sidewalk thing. Bikes.
Are they on the trail still?
Yeah, that goes into effect with the new ordinance on March 1st.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yeah.
But
We're actually.
March 3rd, I believe.
Or March
Are there
3rd.
signs?
It's February, is a short month.
What's that?
Are there gonna be signs on the trail?
Samantha's working with Public Works on
Okay.
And I think mainly at North Beach and then at the pier, they're going to start putting. That's where the signs are going to go up. So
I talked to Samantha about that stuff, and she says that because of all the signage and information and all that, they hope to have it pretty well targeted in for Memorial Day, because that's when they.
that'd be good.
That gives them enough time to actually get this stuff together, there's a lot of people that are getting run over, getting close to getting run over on the beach trails too. Any input from you guys regarding collisions with e-bikes recently in the last month or so?
We had one a couple weeks ago, but it was a woman who hit a parked car. So,
That happens.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything, juicy. People want to, I think, hear that someone was run over by a car, or
Right.
a bicyclist did something egregious and caused a chain reaction or something. This was just a stopped,
Okay.
unoccupied vehicle, but
Maybe
fortunately,
a
nothing.
nice gouge on the side of a car and swell. Anything with
I haven't heard
Paramedic
anything
stuff.
up to my level. I haven't gone and looked for runs that we've gone on, but nothing's come up to my level outside of the ordinary.
Okay.
Kid he rode his bike in front of me the other day in the evening. He was in the street. I didn't hardly see him. It was very close. You should have seen the look on his face when I stopped, So these guys are riding the bikes, and there's a young, probably under 12, right down the middle of the street. I don't know how often it happens, but it happened to me last night.
And dark clothes after night,
It's not really
no
e-bike
lights.
directed, but if a citizen sees a bike in the bushes off of the sidewalk and it's got no wheels on it, I mean, it's a strip left bike, can that citizen pick up that bike and bring it into the police station as found property?
Yeah, I mean, assuming they made a reasonable effort, right? We're supposed to make.
There's nobody around.
To
I mean, there's
identify the owner, or to ensure that they're not right around the corner, or whatever. But or they could call, and a deputy will go out, and look at it, and collect it. If it's like trash, I think the city will come and pick it up. If it's something that's stripped, but one of the things you want to do is check the serial number on that bike just to see if it's been inputted as stolen or whatever. Which almost none of them are, right? Nobody really records their serial number when they buy a bicycle or an e-bike for that matter. But that's what we do to try to identify the owner.
That's appropriate. Okay. Well, let's see. We've gone through 9A already with Bill. So now we're in the police services. Anything to report on your end?
I mean, nothing really new. We do have kind of an event coming up on the 8th with Rod. We're going to do like basically coffee with a cop, but it'll be coffee with a cop and marine safety, and it's not even going to be coffee. So don't quote me on the title.
You lost me. You lost me.
Following this theme of coffee with a cop, which we had traditionally done alone and engaged with the public on various topics. And last year, we grouped up with Rob and his team with fire, and we did some fire information for the public. And so this next go around will be us and marine safety.
Okay.
And then I'll see if these guys want to group up and do something all together, or just kind of present like a more united front with these engagements with the community instead of just from one entity. This is a team game that we're playing here. So I think it's probably hopefully we'll draw a better crowd if there's more different first responder groups involved, but just gives us a chance to work together and show the community that we're all part of one big team here. And that's going to be it's going to be at the pier and the pier, and it's going to be to talk about the new e-bike regulations to try to spread the word to help raise awareness about that.
And when are you targeting it for? The 8th?
The 8th, yeah. I think we're going to do it from 2
Tuesday?
to 4 p.m. Just try to get out there. There'll be some social media stuff. We're still working on a couple of the details.
Okay.
Like the lack of coffee, for example. We're going to come up with something else that might be more appropriate. We're looking with
Slurpees.
fishermen right now to see if they want to do anything with it because it's right there in front of their house. And if not, we're going to bring in another entity, maybe ice cream or something like that.
You got that RSVP stand there. It'd be perfect to advertise them at the same time.
Right. It doesn't have to just be about e-bikes. People can come and talk about whatever, or just come and sit down.
Sure. That's great. Keep us in mind because we'd like to be involved in that.
Yeah.
Take a catalytic converter down there too.
Mine's still never.
Okay. Thank you, Captain Benfield. Chief Capibianco.
The only thing I've got to share is fire season came back last week. It was a fairly significant February fire. I keep saying fire season is year round, and we get reminded every year that it is. So just kind of, I know we're getting a little bit of rain out there now, but no significant amounts. A couple of dry wind, even when it's green like this. It still carried fire with that wind behind it. So just kind of a reminder that it's still dry out there. The heavy fuels are still dry. The grasses are green, but the stuff that'll carry the fire is still pretty dry. So that's really all I have.
Okay, great. Marine safety.
Well, I'd like to steal Rob's slogan here. It's not just a fire season, it's a fire year. So I'd like to say it's not just a summer season, it's a summer year. Last week it was up to 85 on the beach, which in the summertime it doesn't get 85 on the beach. So we had a whole week of basically that high temperatures, which brought mass crowds for February. Typically we wouldn't open towers until the end of March, beginning of April. We had up the staff. Had 5 towers open, 13 rescues on Saturday alone. All of our numbers went up, but also since our last meeting, we've seen an uptick in encampments on the beach, about 6 of them. So we've reported those to code enforcement.
Have they been on the north stretch? Is that where?
A lot of them are between headquarters and Tower 6, London Lane, and then a couple of them down by Tower 7, Tower 9. Just about.
All the way down to like Calapia?
No. So you get Tower 3, which is Tower 5.
Okay, all right.
And the next Tower 7, and the next one's 9. They like to go up against the rocks. And then we had, I think, 4 OCS deputies come down, and all of those were transient as well. So basically, we've had 10 since our last meeting.
One of the reasons they had to do some maintenance. City had to do some maintenance at the train station. So all the ones that were camped there had to go. So that's probably most likely where they went.
I showed up to work, I think, last week on a first thing in the morning, and driving in. What is that? 4 shopping carts.
What?
But right in front of the front door. Yeah, it was.
Surprise.
And then all the debris there. Yeah. So I think that's probably what it was. They just
They just
shipped it down.
pushed down.
I noticed that North Beach, the entrance to the trail, the beach trail there, they did some modifications and put some nice sharp rocks, boulders in there. And darn, kids can't sleep too well on the boulder there.
Yeah, they actually moved our storage containers there. So in the summer season, that storage container is at the end of the parking lot and stores the lifeguard vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So they have, can utilize that up there.
Yeah.
But also, you know, for talk about the trials, outside of that, we have JG swim test. If you have grandkids or kids that you know that want to get into the JG program, they got to complete a 100-yard swim under 2 minutes, and those trials will start here on weekends in mid to late March, all the way through mid to late April.
58 degrees.
No, it's in a pool.
Yeah.
Yeah. The pool's 56.
You don't want to kill them. That hurts membership. It costs money to do.
That hurts my body. All right. Committee chair, I want to thank Tony's crew. They helped me out last week. I found a butcher knife on the gutter while I'm on my walk, and I thought, holy mackerel. And this is during school time, you know, so they came over and helped me out, you know, grabbing it. And like we're talking about the death of the deputy in the helicopter thing, that's very, very tragic, especially to us public safety folks. So
First person on the scene was an off-duty Newport Beach lifeguard, but then he was actually the first person to reach the helicopter and start the rescue there.
sad day. So, you have anything?
One thing is, because I forgot to say it during the legislation, there wasn't legislation, but there was an assembly bill that was going to make it legal for people on bikes, which would also include e-bikes, to not stop at stop signs. And to me, that they would just have to yield somehow. There wasn't any they could roll through, and it got vetoed. Luckily, they decided this probably was not going to be used. The kids probably didn't have the knowledge to know, well, distance in cars and all that. But that just shows you, you know, what the legislature is looking at doing.
We're progressive here. We're in California. Come on.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
Nothing.
Charlie.
Adam, thank you for rearranging the schedule so Brenda could get on there a little bit earlier and being a cool guy about the whole thing.
Cool guy. What the hell is that? Cool guy. Cool head.
Yeah.
Oh, Rickers.
And Rob, I need to get your business card because I wanted to talk to you last week, and I don't know, somehow I couldn't get through to you, but I wanted to talk about some ISO ratings here in San Clemente because some people's fire insurance is getting canceled, and I don't know if the fire service had anything to do with it or what, but I kind of wondered about that. And then standard of coverage updates, I wanted to go through that with you too and find out what the latest ones are. So if you've got a card or just give me your email or number or something, I would appreciate that.
Okay, good. Now, city staff.
You know what? I'll go off committee member Hightower's last comment. The city council had some similar questions of OCFA, and so at the March 15th council meeting, OCFA staff will do a special presentation. But I remember when the questions about insurance rates and things came up, I believe that there's another city consultant that may be able to speak about that.
Yeah, something on the legislative side.
Right.
It's really not a fire department issue with the insurance rates. And,
So the March 15th city council meeting would probably be a good meeting to talk about. I'll also be presenting to open up the city's weed abatement program, and there's some fire clearance monies in that contract with our weed abatement contractor that we work with OCFA on to deal with that. So a lot of those kinds of issues will be on the agenda. Just an announcement, we are currently trying to hire 2 or 3 park rangers. Our All but one of our staff, all but the lead park ranger, are part-time unbenefited positions, and so there's some rotation. And so we found ourselves in a situation where we need some more staff. And so if anybody knows of anybody with any park ranger experience, it's a great job for people that are, getting out of school. Our ideal candidates would typically have a 2 or 4 year degree in like administration of justice or something related to parks and recreation. Having their PC 832 is a huge benefit because we put everybody through that training, and that's 1 week that we don't have to pay them if they already come in with it.
Is that a part-time or full-time?
That's part-time.
Part-time.
But you do get the Smokey the Bear hat.
No, you do not.
Oh, man. Maybe a flashlight?
They get a flashlight.
Oh, good. See a flashlight. You work in jail, you get a flashlight. This is it. Thank you, gentlemen, for putting up with all this stuff. And Rebecca, thank you.
And just one other item, if there are, I don't believe that we have anybody scheduled for a special presentation next month, if there's any desire.
Yeah, I can. I got a whole list of people that I say go to, so disaster preparedness stuff.
All right, well, I will leave that to the direction of the committee or the committee chair, but I don't have anybody lined up.
I'll let you know.
All right.
All right. Anything else for the good of the cause? Okay. We'll adjourn next meeting, Public Safety Committee, Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 at 3 p.m.
We need a vote on this.
Yeah, but it's the 22nd is the 4th Tuesday next month, too.
March 22nd.
Okay. I move that we adjourn this meeting till our next regular meeting, Tuesday, March 22nd at 3 p.m.
Right.
Yes.
Community room of the City Hall.
Second.
Done.
That's good.
Unanimous.
And the time is 5:31.
Oh, what?